Welcome to part 2 of this discussion of To Learn How to Speak. To learn how to speak with the voices of the land. The poem ends and starts with these lines. It becomes a refrain. It's necessary for South Africans to learn to use the expressions, even the languages of this land. The word voices refers to the people who are the inhabitants of the land and their languages. The voices are personified. We have to use our languages so that we can remain rooted in the local in the face of globalization. The writer protests against a globalizing, one-size-fits-all, so-called Washington consensus. He does not agree with the view that we should all be American in our ways. This comes from a chapter in South African Verse interview with Jeremy Cronin in the year 2000. The first two lines are followed by an exposition, an interpretation and explanation of what it means to learn how to speak. It means to parse the speech in its rivers. The poet uses an extended metaphor of the land. To parse is another example of personification, as obviously the land cannot speak, it's inanimate. In the study of languages, to parse is to divide a sentence into grammatical parts. The poet emphasizes languages, voices, and uses terms from language and a biological description of the speech organs throughout the poem. The phrase "the speech in its rivers" suggests that the land itself speaks, that is, its rivers and stones. The speaker hears and divides into parts the language of the land as heard in its rivers. He attempts to understand the separate parts of the sentences. He tries to catch in the inarticulate grunt a bit of the language. The implication of the word catch is that while the speaker is learning, no one is teaching him. He's simply placing himself near the speakers and picking up bits of speech which are at times incomprehensible. If one is inarticulate, one is unable to express one's ideas or feelings clearly. From a grunt, which is not a word, as if unable to express oneself, humanity has progressed through difficulties with speech, as indicated by the words stammer, call, cry, babble, tongues knot in line 5. If a word is difficult to say, it is as if your tongue knots. An early form of speech is suggested as used by people from ancient times using stone tools. The stones themselves have had to become the building blocks of words, as well as have had to indicate their own meaning. Note the repetition of the S sound in line 6, an example of sibilance, a sense of the stoneness of these stones. The repetition of the sound stresses the link between the meaning of the word stones and the land. The beginning of language is indicated as coming from the land itself. Our own stones are where our words for them and for all other things come from. A sense of the stoneness of these stones from which all words are cut. The language is rooted in this country. You should feel a welling up of pride, a feeling of belonging. Our words come from our land. To trace with the tongue wagon trails. With our words we follow the trails of the voortrekkers. We need to follow the roads and journeys taken by people to learn their history and language. Note how the alliteration of the T links the meanings of trace, tongue and trails. It also reminds us of the great track, that should be, saying the suffix of their eggs in kuil, pan, fontein, in watery names that confirm the dryness of their ways. The place name endings, suffixes, are from Afrikaans and all refer to water. A pit or hollow, a flat basin where water can collect, and a fountain. The naming of these places indicates the importance of water to the Voortrekkers. These watery names are contrasted to the dry ways of the Afrikaans people at the time of the Great Trek, in watery names that confirm the dryness of their ways. The dryness is a reference to both the landscape and, we know them, the unemotional, undemonstrative, factual ways of the Afrikaners. Now look at lines 12 to 13. To visit the places of occlusion or the lick in the Vleybank dawn. To learn to speak is to visit an occlusion or blockage, as in a stream. It also refers to the closing of the vocal cords while speaking. Once again, words of speaking and language are used while referring to the land. The word lick refers to a salt lick, where salt is left for animals, but is once again a word related to the tongue. The word Vleybank is a compound word using both Afrikaans, vlei, and bank, which is English. Or it depends on how you pronounce it, really. You could say bank and then it becomes Afrikaans. But you can see how the mixture of languages is implied. To bury my mouth in the pit of your tongue. As of line 12, there's a use of words that refer to what is hidden, occlusion, bury, pit of your arm. Perhaps the speaker realizes that some aspects of language are not obvious or clear and require deeper searching and involvement for understanding, like the word Vleybank. The speaker talks of burying his mouth in the armpit of the land, a place where secrets are tucked away, an indication of closeness and intimacy. The burying of the mouth in the pit of someone's arm is said to be burying it in that planetarium, pectoral beginning to the nub of time. He calls it a place that is a planetarium, from where time can be understood by looking at the stars. The P alliteration in pit, planetarium, pectoral, links the words. The armpit is compared to a planetarium because they're both dome-shaped and they both hold possibilities. In this case of respectively intimacy and the universe. Pectoral means related to the chest. The nub is the crux or central point of a matter. From the intimate, the universe can be understood. I find the image of the burying of the mouth in the pit of someone's arm a little disconcerting, to say the least. Let's just say that by putting my head on your chest, everything makes sense. The poet says he wants to bury my mouth in the pit of your arm, in that planetarium, pectoral beginning to the nub of time. Down there, close to the water table, to feel. The water table refers to underground water. The speaker looks from the stars, a planetarium, to under the ground, the water table, for the words of the languages spoken in South Africa. The line ends with to feel, which starts a part of a sentence that starts in the next line. An example of enjambment, of which there are quite a few in the poem. To feel the full moon as it drums at the back of my throat, its cow-skinned vowel. The full moon is metaphorically compared to a drum. They're both round. The speaker hears the sounds of the land at the back of his throat as he makes sounds like cow-skinned vowels. He uses a metaphor to link the cowhide drum of African culture to a vowel formed in the back of the throat. These are African sounds made using African instruments. To write a poem with words like I'm telling you, stompie, stick fast, golowan, songololo, just boom bang. As of line 21, the poem moves to more modern times and closer to cities like specifically Johannesburg. Township lingo is used and occurrences during heated political times in South Africa are referred to. With the colloquial expression, I'm telling you, the speaker emphasizes that what he is saying is true and should be believed. You can write a poem with words such as these. I'm telling you, Stompie, stick fast, Golovan. He has just done so, hasn't he? Stompie is not only slang for the last part of a cigarette or a short person, but was also the name of a boy who went missing mysteriously, having been suspected of being a police informant in the times of apartheid. Stick fast presumably comes from Afrikaans, vassteek, and means to get stuck. Golovan is a small tip truck on rails used in the mines, a cocoa pan, or Afrikaans, koekoepan. Songololo is a millipede. Just boom bang is an informal phrase describing the way things sometimes just happen. To understand the least inflections, to voices without swallowing syllables. Born in tin shacks or catch the 5:15 Ikwata past 5 Johannesburg train. To reach the low chant of the mine gang's unbreakable resolve. The speaker refers to the rise and fall inflections of the voice and tone as words are spoken without struggle or hesitation. The parts, syllables of the words spoken, come from people living in informal settlements. The setting now is the townships and the mines where we mine for minerals. And that's why he speaks of the mine gang's mineral glow of our people's unbreakable resolve. The speaker has made it clear that he not only wants to learn the language, but specifically he wants to learn with the same voices that are of this land. He speaks about the resolve of the people, placing the poem in the context of the struggle against apartheid. He refers to the people as our people in order to include himself and to align himself with our people, with them. The poem closes with the same two lines it starts with, to learn how to speak with the voices of this land, for emphasis and to repeat the speaker's resolve and determination. This time, however, the poet replaces the word the when referring to the land with this. This is specific. Now he is present, invested. This is where he belongs.